My art teacher said she wasn't sure that there was a post-secondary education facility that would know what to do with a blind kid. The experience with Star Trek, here I am actually still getting to transform. The optimism of the franchise is just so powerful. The message of hope that it brings out.
Now we go back 30 years or so to Star Trek The Next Generation, when LeVar Burton played a blind helmsman named LaForge, and he initially had a visor and then had prosthetic implants.
The skin of the ship is losing its integrity.
Where is it? I can't see it.
Right there!
But LeVar Burton, as we know, is not legally blind, but was playing a legally blind character. You are legally blind, and you're now playing a character who is legally blind. It's interesting how things have shifted over the last 30 years.
Yeah, when the call went out for the casting, they were looking specifically for actors who were blind or visually impaired to play a blind alien, and on Star Trek. And so when that sort of crossed my desk, I said, yes, please put me in, coach, I'm ready. And the audition process and everything was, they spoke very openly and candidly about the type of actor they were looking for and to bring some of that lived experience. The character, while doesn't have the use of his eyes, he's got this extreme telepathy, so he's actually able to see better than anyone else on the bridge or on the ship. So in a way, I'm actually playing a bit of a superhero, which is kind of nice.
Tell me about how it came across your desk. What was it random? Like, how did you first encounter the Star Trek opportunity?
Well, it was through my agent, Chris Oldfield in Toronto. He gets all the casting breakdowns, and when he saw that, he sent it to me and said, we should probably go for this. And being that it was Star Trek, I immediately got very excited because I've been raised on Star Trek. It's in my blood, really. My dad was a high school English teacher, and he actually took a year off, took a sabbatical, and wrote a master's thesis on teaching science fiction in high schools. So we got big doses of sci-fi at home, watching the original series and reruns, and then Next Generation when it came out. So yeah, there's a real love of it, and just the optimism of the franchise is just so powerful. The message of hope that it brings out. So the opportunity to jump into Star Trek was just, it was kind of a no-brainer.
What about that opportunity, about the lived experience you talked about? Like 30 years ago, anybody could play anybody, but now we realize that we have to represent diversity of ability and cultures in everything we do. And that must have been such a, wow, pinch me, am I really here?
Oh, every day. It's pretty exciting. And to speak to that, the cultural shift, seeing that within my lifetime has been really exciting. And to be honest, a little challenging as well. I mean, I got into performing and acting because I like to play other people. I get a great deal of joy, and there's an element of, I guess, compassion that takes over when you step into somebody else's shoes and you see the world from somebody else's perspective. And that really excites me as a performer. I have done some shows where I just stand on stage as myself and speak, which feels more like public speaking and a presentation than acting. Acting is transforming yourself. I remember seeing Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot, for instance, and he plays Christy Brown, who's a disabled painter. And I think I was probably 14 or 15 when I saw that movie, just starting to get into the world of paint myself, and seeing Daniel Day-Lewis completely transform himself on screen. I was convinced. I was certain that they had found an actor who was disabled. And then I saw him get up and receive an Academy Award. I'm like, wait a minute, what the? But that sort of transformation was just so powerful, and that's really what attracted me into getting on stage and playing other characters. Playing Richard III, or playing. I was in college and I played Reverend Eli Jenkins in Under Milkwood, who's this old Welshman. And so you get to kind of step into these other roles and transform yourself. And now the shift towards authenticity, in a way, takes away that opportunity from the actor. You can't step out on stage unless you have that lived experience. I mean, there's a real cutting off of opportunity for those levels of expression, transformation, and ultimately, for the performer, it's an exercise in compassion and empathy. and the audience can either choose to go on that journey and accept this, or they can kind of fold their arms and say, well, that's not real. But it's a bit like watching the opening of Star Wars and immediately saying, yeah, right. In a way, it's like it's this kind of harsh skepticism that I hope at some point anyway we can move beyond that. But the experience with Star Trek, here I am actually still getting to transform. I'm sitting for 3.5 hours in a makeup chair and having 15 pieces of prosthetic put on, and then pretending that I can, read people's thoughts and walk down a corridor without bumping into anything. So there's still, even within the authenticity of the casting, there's an opportunity for me as an actor to transform.
Well, let's talk about your painting, because you have managed to merge painting with performance and with music. So tell me, what is the intersection of those multidisciplinary arts that you have? What do you think is the most dominant one, and then how did they intersect?
Well, I started, so going back, I was really interested in music as a kid, so I took guitar and piano lessons and drum lessons all the way up until high school. Got involved in theater in probably grade 6 or so. I think I did my first play, and was writing from the time I was in grade 3. And always drawing, always doodling. It was something I would do to pass the time instead of learning in school. And so all of that sort of creative stuff was just always coming out, and we were never really asked to choose anything. So whenever the impulse would strike, I would just go off and do that. And then as we got into high school, we started to have to choose less and less options. So I dropped music in favor of theater and art class. And then when I got to, I think, the end of grade 11, my art teacher said that she wasn't sure that there was a post-secondary education facility that would know what to do with a blind kid. She said, I can teach you to do basic fundamentals, but beyond that, I'm not sure how much further you're actually going to be able to go with this. And so I ended up dropping art class in favor of drama class in grade 12. But I was also playwriting and whatever. And I started to pursue the playwriting field in high school as well. And for me, it was a little safer than getting on stage. And certainly in front of a camera, that always terrified me, because I knew that on camera, my eyes, I mean, it's very obvious that my eyes are unusual, shall we say, outside the mean. And so I like the stuff behind the scenes. I really like to perform, and I really like to entertain. And on stage, I can get far enough away and I can rehearse it enough that no one can tell. But I thought, no one's ever heard of a blind actor before, so maybe that's not really an option for myself. I put that limitation on myself. And same with the visual art, really. It was, someone said, well, I don't know how to teach you. And so I immediately thought, well, that's not a direction I can go. And then what happened? Well, after high school, I got a job working at Alberta Theatre Projects in Calgary. It was a junior apprentice position. So for $75 a week, I got to work in the office. I got to work in every department, the art department. I got to read scripts. I got to go backstage. I got to work with the stage management and just do absolutely everything in that year. I just stayed in Calgary for that year, and honestly, it was completely transformative. From there, I went to a 2-year program at Mount Royal College, which was a conservatory program, where I ended up working with and meeting, again, more people that I still work with to this day. And it was the decision, I think, to stay in Calgary and foster those relationships that has led me to, exploring beyond it. And I go back to Calgary at least once a year, if not to work, then just to nurture those roots, because it means a lot to me.
So all those decades of varied experience, when you walked onto the set of Star Trek Strange New Worlds for the first time, you knew all the departments, you knew the backstory, you knew not the backstory of your character, but more of how the operation, it wasn't unfamiliar to you.
Well, film is really different from TV, or from theater, I should say. Star Trek was really my first time on a big shoot like that. I've done some independent stuff, but the size of it was absolutely enormous. I'm certainly familiar with the departments, but not to the extent that there's assistants and assistants of the assistants and all of that. I was actually quite nervous showing up on the first day because there was so much that did seem unfamiliar, just the size of it. And
This is in Mississauga too. They were shooting.
yeah,
in
they were
Toronto,
shooting at the CBS. I can't remember what the CBS Canada stage is in Mississauga. And I expressed that, I think maybe in my first or second Zoom audition. I said, "Well, just so you know, like I don't have much experience with this, and I'm really going to need some help on the set." And they were right away with somebody. So as soon as I showed up, I had an assistant who would meet me at the van and walk me to where I needed to go with the COVID testing, and then over to the trailer, and just somebody with me every step of the way, right up until and including when they said action. You know, they would walk me where the camera was going to be. It's going to move like this, and here's where your eye line has to be. And there was just so much care taken around that I never once felt like I'm having to wing it or I'm having to fake it or any of that. Yeah, and it really made me feel confident and very comfortable in that environment.
So walking onto the set of Star Trek for the first time must have been a phenomenal experience.
It truly was. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was probably halfway through the shooting of the first season that the penny actually dropped that this was real. Because I would just be shaking my head and pinching myself every time. Like I remember the first camera test that I did. So it was 5.5 hours in the makeup chair to test the prosthetics, to work them out, and then they brought me into the set of the bridge of the Enterprise to put me in front of a camera and see how it was all going to look. And they said, say something, and I think I just went, oh. Maybe a tear came down my cheek. Yeah.
Tell me about the prosthetics that you're wearing. What is the look that they're trying to achieve with Hemmer?
Hemmer is an Andorian, which is a species that's typically blue, and they have antennae on their head. And the Enar, which is a subspecies, they're the albino version that lives in the ice caves in the northern Andor. So we're totally white, and we have antenna, and it's 15 pieces of prosthetics, beginning with a wig cap or a bald cap, and then cheeks and eyes and forehead and ridges and sort of spikes coming out of my eyebrows, and then pieces on the hands as well. So I'm totally pale. And what was interesting about the eyes was that in the early days they wanted to put these contact lenses that would white out my pupils. So I went in for one of the tests, and they brought me to an eye doctor in Toronto, a specialist who did a quick exam, and we talked about my vision history. And then the contact lens people came in, and they so the thing was with the makeup on the hands, I wouldn't be able to put them in myself, so it would be somebody else putting the lens in, and that immediately just made me cringe and like, and then the taking out of it was even worse. But once the lens got in, like my eye immediately went red, and it was offset, and so I couldn't see. And the doctor kind of pulled me aside and said, "Look, you got 9% that's working great for you right now. Well, let's not mess it up." And again, the production side of Star Trek just stepped right in, and they were like, "No problem, we will do it in post." And so the look and I didn't actually, like, when we shot it, it was my eyes, but they've gone through, and every single frame they've digitally changed so that Hemmer's eyes are totally white, and they look phenomenal. And it's one of those things that for me as a disabled performer is a total dream, because I've always been concerned with the way that my eyes look on camera, and that I can't hide this, and this was going to be an issue. And here they've given me a brand new set of eyes, and it leads me to thinking about, Daniel Day-Lewis, who was an able-bodied actor who could transform himself physically and convince you that he was disabled. And now we have the technology where a disabled performer can do a performance and can convince you that they are not who they truly are. So there's that transformation again. And I dream of the time when we're going to see someone in a wheelchair and we'll be convinced that they're dancing. Wow. We're getting there.